So hey, welcome to RPG Maker, the only thing I know how to use. And in the last video, the last part, I don't know how this entire setup is going to work. I talked about how my monster capture is aesthetically similar enough to both Pokemon and Final Fantasy, but still it's very clunky because I am an inexperienced game designer, if I can even call myself that. And I really have to show you what it is I'm talking about. So if we go down to my items, and I have these chains, that shouldn't be that. Where would it be? I guess it'd be that. Yeah, alright. So I have these chains that function as the quote-unquote Pokeballs of the game, and the reason they're chains is because it fits better with Final Fantasy in a way, but the way it's set up is by a series of variables. So let's just copy this code here and bring it over here. All of this that was just pasted is inside this one formula block. And this is the reason why it's so clunky. I have to copy and paste this multiple times on the different quote-unquote Pokeballs and edit only slight variations for what it is that's changing. And going through this right now wouldn't really do a viewer any good. This works only because of the way I've laid out my own design. Now, I can go and give you a step-by-step tutorial if anybody would be interested in that, but this isn't something that I can easily show somebody else how to do, like with the other systems that I've done. And the reason that is because of what I call the systems. Like, all of this can just be broken down and explained. So remember the class upgrade system? It's a series of just defining variables, and it doesn't matter exactly what it is in your project, as long as you have these listed out variables being defined by these codes, because these codes don't necessarily need to change if you set them up the way I describe, but because there's such an array of variables that are dependent on different parts of your game, and it can change depending on what it is your game is about. For instance, because I'm creating Pokemon items as closely as I can make them, again, as a way for me to experience game design and not me like plagiarizing, I have set it up in such a way that you can be defined as standing on water if the terrain tag is equal to 4. So if we were to go over to the overworld and switch over to terrain and find some water, which is going to be on the side of the map because this is Final Fantasy. Yeah, if you're standing on these tiles, I don't even know if you can see my mouse. Probably can't. If you're standing on the tiles labeled with terrain of 4, you're being classified as standing on water. Now, your game might not have that, so what that means is whenever you go over to somewhere, yeah, if terrain is equal to 4, you know what, I have 2 of these exact same conditional branches. Like, see, this is kind of what I'm getting at. I'm just making things. I'm just putting everything together in such a, like, duct tape sort of way that it's not a good looking game internally, at least. So I can honestly just take these off and put them where they would be and just get rid of that. And I've cleaned it up ever so slightly, but it's still very ugly, honestly. So going back to the monster capture thing, this copper chain is a thing. This is just kind of the event that I've decided to work with. Uh, A is a value. I don't even know where it's defined, honestly. It's defined by the item again. Somewhere. Like, I would just have to scroll to find it. Like, each of these variables is important somewhere for my game, but it's just not a good looking. Okay, here we go. So, what I have defined as A is the damage compared to the max HP, or even just the HP of the enemy, yeah. So, unlike Pokemon, which uses a, a ball and just you capture the enemy and then the enemy can break free, my items are battle items. If you are using your strength to basically capture an enemy by force by surrounding it with a chain, it's going to be hurting the enemy, which I've defined as HP damage by doing a calculation of something, and this goes into the the formula sheet itself. So the actual damage value is equal to this variable 29 plus the user's base attack. Yeah. And 29 must be the catch rate of this item. See, me trying to explain what it is that I made after it's already working is kind of difficult because I just threw it together, like I said, in this duct tape sort of way, because now it works. The reason why it works isn't as important as it actually working for me. And I can't really give you a tutorial, otherwise one would have already been put up on my channel, because I've been sitting on the system for like 3 weeks, close to a month. This is not even to say that I've been tweaking the actual enemy system forever. So I guess my entire point is just, you, especially if you're just making games by yourself for the fun of it, if you want to learn, you just do it. You take the things that you do know. Like for me, I know Pokemon, and even if I don't know the mechanics, I look into them, I learn how they operate, and I recreate them to the best of my ability by either just throwing together like 400 lines of code, just be able to replicate something, or I find plugins which work, and then I find other plugins that I think work, but then they don't, at least for my purposes. Like, I'm sure this Pokemon type system by some random dude does what it needs to do in other people's games, but not for mine, I suppose. Or just doesn't work in conjunction with other plugins that I want to be using, such as the Yanfly systems. Like all of these, look how many I have. I use all of them for their express purposes. And if I actually boot up the game and show you why it is it's not working, I think the UI is pretty important, especially whenever the other plugin doesn't provide anything besides uh, an internal value, which can be changed and recreated by myself. So if I go to status, this is Yanfly's status menu plugin, and it has elemental advantages. And this is user-defined, of course, and because it's based on Pokemon, I have all the Pokemon types. But my main character here has true neutral to everything. If I'm using the Some Random Dude plugin, it's not going to work the way I would like it to show here. Because this UI looks great, as far as I'm concerned. You have everything you need. You have your base, you have your general status, you have a parameter graph. This is more just aesthetic things. It just helps the player, the viewer. Again, I have knowledge in film. It helps the person, it helps the audience see things differently. You have elements, which is honestly helpful. In newer Pokemon games, you have, whenever you go up against an enemy, it'll show you which moves are effective, super effective, and all that. But you can't, unless you know the type chart offhand, you can't look at your Pokemon stats and say, oh, this is what this Pokemon is effective against. In the same vein, it has states, what it can resist and what not. There are undead enemies that resist certain states, death, namely. But even in Pokemon, you have the electric types who resist paralysis. You have the fire types who resist burning and all that. It's UI, it's aesthetic. It allows your audience to see more of the internal workings of your game that you have spent 10 years working on. I.e. me. Then you have these types of attributes, which are typically hidden, such as hit rate for Pokemon, or accuracy, as it would be called in Pokemon. And these values are very skewed in terms of right here, because I am basing this primarily on Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy has all of the battle mechanics, where Pokemon has all of the exploration mechanics. And in some weird way, I like that it combines that way. But at the same time, I get these odd numbers where your hit rate is 173%. But when you throw it into a battle calculation, it actually means something along the lines of like 80. That should be on me as the developer to build this in a way that makes sense. If you have an evasion rate of 53, that makes it look like you can evade half of the time. But in reality, you don't, because I'm pretty sure it's hit rate subtracted by evasion rate, and if I pull out my handy-dandy calculator, 173 minus 53 is 120, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So, there's that. Although I'm pretty sure in reality the 173 is divided by 200, which makes it 86.5. And again, that should be on me as the developer to fix this, to make it look and play like it should. Well, I guess that's it for me.